chairing the meeting today for the Planning and Zoning Board meeting for the Village of Pinehurst for July 21st, 2022. We do have, I'll point out that we have 5 members of the board present and some village staff with us today. We'll go ahead and allow the board members to introduce themselves, starting on my right with Philip.
Philip Shoemaker.
Jack Farrell.
Louise McCurry.
Matt Jones.
And we do have Alex Cameron, Darren Burrich, Maria Carpenter, and Alfred Cassidy joining us today from the village. Welcome, everybody. We will not be taking any action as a board today. This is a work session. Today on our agenda, we'll be visiting Village Place form-based codes and zoning updates. And again, we won't be taking any action by the board. And so with that, I'm going to turn this on over to Darren.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Appreciate it. And this is kind of exciting. I mean, we've been trying to get to this point through the entire process as we've kicked off the Village Place. We went through that process for the last year and a half. We finally got the Village Place plan approved, and now we're moving on to really what is going to be some hard work that actually makes the vision that's kind of identified in the plan a reality. And one of the most important components of that is actually the zoning code and the zoning code updates and the application of the form-based code. Over the course of the next, 5, 6, 7 work sessions, which we're hoping to meet every other week, we want to work through this form-based code. We want to work through and discuss some of the zoning code updates that we're going to need to do, and some of the base zoning district changes that we're going to need to do as part of this process. The way we envision this occurring is we envision the form-based code being applied as an overlay district to the Village Place area. So that's why some of those base zoning districts, the uses, the standards, we have to look at that and see what changes that we might have to do from a district zoning perspective. Tonight, I'm hoping we're hoping that we can get this done in 2 hours. If we can't get it done in 2 hours, we'll just move it to the next week. But that's kind of my goal, is to keep us on the 2-hour time frame. So kind of the agenda tonight is really it's here. This was in the agenda or in my memo. One, familiarize understanding of existing zoning districts and development standards for the area. That's important because we have 5 to 6 different zoning, I think 5 or 6 different zoning districts in the area, and they all have different zoning underlying standards. They also have different use standards. Some allow more uses, some allow less uses, things like that. We need to familiarize our understanding of the form-based code building types. As you can see in the regulating plan, and why we're doing this right now, is the regulating plan is going to divide the district into various blocks, and in each of the blocks there's going to be a different building type or building form that's going to be allowed to locate in that block. We'll have to further look at how we further divide the uses within each of those blocks, but the basic building block of our regulating plan is going to be the building type that's allowed in the block, the building heights that are allowed in the block, and whether we're going to require there to be active frontage in the block. Active frontage are uses like where you have storefronts, retail, restaurant, things like that, that actually have like a pedestrian component and liven up the streets, kind of like our existing downtown core area. So we want to review building types by block, and we're going to go over block by block by block by block, each of the blocks within the regulating plan area. We're going to review the building heights, and as you can see in the regulating plan, we have minimum and maximum heights. So if it says 1 to 3, it could potentially be a 1 to 3 story building. If it says a minimum of 2, that's a minimum 2-story building. And then identify review active frontage areas. That's we'll get where the storefronts, retail uses, things like that. And then D, if we can get to it, identify potential locations for prominent buildings where additional standards may be considered and land use types more narrowed. So if we're looking at an area that is really kind of a special area because it's a vista, because it's at the end of a street, we want some additional qualitative standards to be incorporated into or required in that building. We can consider that. Also, we want to discuss potential zoning map changes and PDO amendments, just to get an overview of that. So this is kind of the vision, this was that aerial perspective of the potential look of Village Place over the next 20, 30, 50 years, depending on what happens in this area. So what's important about this particular image is when we start looking at the form-based code, the forms, so you can see the forms within here, you can see live work over here, you can see maybe live work on this, mixed use, a hotel over here. That's where this becomes important. So this is kind of the inspiration for what's in that regulating plan. Bear with me because let's see, where's this? This, I didn't get to show you at the last one because we didn't have the drone run. We didn't have that capability yet. We just got license on it. So I just want to kind of show you the overview of the area that we're dealing with. And you all know it, but I don't think you've seen it from this perspective. Of course, this is the brewery, and you can see the water tank site, the public services site. You can see a large property here. This is the Punch Jones property that's, I believe, currently on the market. Going north, of course, we're going to hit Rattlesnake. Here's McCaskill. Here's Hughes Plumbing. So you can see, again, you can see what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, especially in this core area that we're trying to call it, there's going to be a lot of redevelopment to occur in that core area. And that really requires the public services complex to relocate. We have to deal with the Moore County water tank site, and potentially, here's the EMS, the Moore County EMS facilities in that area. Hughes Plumbing, we don't think that that's going anywhere in the near future. So for the time being, we're going to have to build the plan around it. Here is the Greens at Arboretum site. This is that 3- and 4-story multiple family building that went up a few years back. Phase 2 is right here. So phase 2 is an approved, I believe it's a 2-story mixed-use building on this particular site.
Darren, back up just a little bit.
Yep.
That lot that was by the brewery, has there been any conversations about moving those utilities?
You mean the ones going through right here?
The
No.
tanks, you mean the tanks?
Well, there's
There's electrical lines.
these lines that are going, I think, let me just, so it's these lines that are going through here. No, and I think, that should be one of the things that, as we go to implement this plan, you can see all these overhead lines going through here, then going up and down McCaskill. We need to, potentially come up with some type of plan to underground that because, yeah, you're right, this bisects that parcel. And really, not only do, we all know what the overhead lines look like on the environment from an aesthetic standpoint, but they really, potentially affected this development pattern on this site. So it's something that we should be looking at going forward.
That's the old laundry site.
Correct. And there'll be another potential remediation site potentially as a laundry. I'm not sure. Phase 1 will pick that up. So again, going north. So then we start to get into that area. Clark Chevrolet, nothing's probably going to happen with that anytime in the near future. But we'll apply some of the form-based code principles to that in case something would develop in that area. You have this, this older this is a mixed-use area. You have some restaurants, you got industry in here, Village Printers. So you've got a number of mixed older uses. They're starting to tire out from a building perspective, so we might see a period of redevelopment. The difficulty with redevelopment in this particular area is there's so many different property owners, ownership situations over here that no one person has a lot of property to do any redevelopment with this. So it's going to take somebody to come in, the market potentially to shift to make it profitable for somebody to come in here and buy some of those uses. Now you go over here to the Clark property, and this property here, which is currently zoned neighborhood commercial, it's vacant right now. So this is a developable site. This is kind of an underutilized side of the Clark site, and it's not when you're over here in McIntyre. It's not had we had a strong form-based code with architectural controls in place, you probably wouldn't have buildings that have kind of this look on them. So that's another part of the form-based code. We're going to have some strong architectural controls. But at some point, this might go through a period of redevelopment. Headed north, this property is currently owned by the village. So at some point, the village could consider what it wants to do with this property. Headed north, the small commercial office building here on the corner of Kelly and Rattlesnake. You get over here, and I think you see where we put we put something on a regulating plan saying, you know, just like Jack has said in Trotter Hills, we don't need Trotter Hills really to be covered by the form-based code. You don't really need the form-based code to be covered a developed residential subdivision. So we don't think we need standards or to apply it in that particular area. Going across the block to the west, you do have these two apartment buildings that are on a site. This is a large site. It's about, I think it's about three plus acres. So there is some redevelopment potential here. It is a non-conforming use at this current time, and then it must have been it. And then you get up here to Cannon Park, and I don't think not much is going to happen from that's not a civic perspective up here that we don't control. And then you have some of this other area to the west, which is also in the regulating plan, but this is all pretty much public conservation. So I'm going to keep that up because we're going to probably go back to that at some point. Context? Thank you. This is the zoning in the area, and what you can see is please, why did it do that? Sorry. Down. There you go. Okay, so this is the zoning in the area. So you can see that it's a mixed bag of zoning within the area. The largest assemblage of zoning is in the village mixed-use area. The village mixed-use area is also one of those zoning districts that allows the most underlying uses to locate within the district. I think it's sitting at about 35 or 36. Then you move on to the neighborhood commercial zone, which is right here. Neighborhood commercial, interesting, it splits this block where VMU is. Neighborhood commercial is the next most uses, and that's, I think, again, 35 or 36. This is all R10. This is where the apartments are. NC, this is where the Rehabilitation Center is. PC, this is where our park is. And then you go down to the corner of Magnolia and McCaskill. That is that Traditions site where that townhome site is. That's that village residential zoning district. And then along Community Road, this is that village cottage professional that allows, I think I made a note, it allows commercial uses to locate within this district, but these are all, I believe, with the exception of probably one developed residential lots. And then kind of lastly, before we start to hit the building types, you know, when we start to look at the zoning districts that are in place, I'm just going to do a basic overview. The village commercial district. The village commercial district is really what the village center is, the zoning in that center is. It was kind of the inspiration for some of the recommendations in the Village Place plan, because we saw Village Place as an extension of the village center. So a lot of the recommendations are geared towards that village center district. The village commercial district accommodates an active pedestrian-friendly area of community-scale commercial, residential, office, civic uses in both vertically mixed use as well as freestanding buildings. So when you start to look at what can locate in this district, of all the districts that we've talked about, VC allows, other than a residential district, of our commercial districts, VC is one of the most limited districts in terms of what uses can locate in there. It's, again, trying to create that active pedestrian and lively place. Mixed use, the intent of the village mixed use district is established as a pedestrian scale district which caters to the everyday needs of nearby neighborhoods. It's interesting with the village mixed use district, it's the only one, I believe, that actually allows multiple family uses to occur within that district. And again, think about that, keep that in the back of your mind when we're looking at the types of buildings that can be allowed in that VMU area. Neighborhood commercial district, again, it's a little bit lesser district from an intensity standpoint from the neighborhood commercial district. The neighborhood commercial district is established as a district in which the principal use of land is for small-scale commercial, retail, office, and service uses. So you see small scale, smaller buildings, things like that. Village residential, that's the townhouse, that's the traditions of Old Town Townhouse site. It's established as a district in which the principal use of land is for multiple family and single-family dwellings in close proximity. I think the approved site plan on that was approved as a townhouse development site. I think, 18 to 20 units or something like that were approved on that site. Public conservation, that's where our parks are, things like that. We're not really proposing any major changes to that. Village Cottage Professional District, the Village District Professional District is intended to provide for limited office and retail development. So we don't, again, this district is the one fronting along Community and Dundee roads, and it does allow commercial uses, but there are no commercial uses currently occupied in there. And then R10, which is that residential district. Any questions on any of that we just went through?
How is limited office defined? Is that just kind of limited to upstairs only, not retail front?
I don't know. Alex? That's a good point.
It's not, there's no answer.
No, it's a good question.
And looking at the table that village mixed use does not allow municipal public service facility, or does, but village commercial does not.
It's not, because when the VC district was created, it wasn't for that intent. Again, it was for the, go down, you look at the village center, and the uses that are in the village center largely reflect
What's there?
what's there, and they're trying to keep that, kind of keep that vibe.
Darren,
Yeah.
I have one question, and it relates to the Legends site. It has an approved site plan for X number of townhouses, I believe, right?
The tradition site?
Yeah, tradition
Yes,
site. I mean, yeah.
correct.
Now, to what extent can you down zone that? Even having given an approval in the past, even though they haven't started construction, obviously.
It really becomes, it becomes a vested right issue. We can downzone things, but when we look at the vesting time period, and we haven't looked at that question, if we downzone something and they still have their vested right, they could still move forward with the approved project based on that vested right.
Do they have vested rights?
Explain what that vested rights means.
So vested rights is kind of lumped in with permit choice. It's basically, if you have a site-specific development plan that's been approved, and then that's defined in the statute, sometimes it's defined even further within the local ordinance. If you've gotten a valid government approval on a site-specific plan, you're vested. And what term of vesting you have basically depends on the type of plan you got approved, how it was approved, what phases were associated with it, how far have you gone forward. And typically that period can run from 2 or 3 years up to about 8. So without getting, I'm pretty confident
That's
that
over, it's 10 years
it's
ago
gone.
plus, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're kind of splitting the zoning there in the future, so, anyway,
Splitting the, yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
correct,
Village Cottage.
professional, which is right here.
But does this allow for home-based business, home-based, since you're doing the residential in your,
So you mean like you're working out of your home, or do you mean like typically it does, yes. It's, I think if you, closer to the Orange Road intersection there, but not right there at it, but yeah, kind of where Darren has his cursor, that's where the,
Hair cutting,
is that what that is? And then right next to it too is the accountant, right? Or
Yeah,
Bob
there's
Barrett's
a-
office and things.
yeah, that's
So,
right.
so very small scale type
Right
office
here.
spaces. But if it allows for a residential use, then you can also have a home occupation. You're just limited to the square footage.
yeah, and I'm not talking about businesses that generate traffic.
And that's what the home occupation clause that we have, it like limits deliveries, parking, signage, things like that. So you can't, basically, you're not really advertising that
Right.
you've got an office. And also, the transaction of goods can't occur on the premise. So it does keep that pretty limited.
But also the VCP, when we look at it from that standpoint, it allows more than home-based businesses. It allows regular businesses to locate within that area.
Cottage, village cottage professional, it comes to mind that it's cottages that are professional offices. That's all.
I guess, no, I understand. Any other questions on that, Jack? Anything else? All right, Alex, you want to go over what?
That's good. And the term of vesting is probably the most complicated portion. We run the Chapter 160D updates through this board last summer, I believe. And I believe rightfully so, when we went to council, I was asked probably what's the most important or the most still unclear portion of that, and is vesting. So it is complicated, but you can understand too why it's important to have a vested right.
So you can see, what we're dealing with as we apply a form-based overlay, which is really a zoning district. It's another zoning district overlay. You can see we're going to have to contend with a number of different zoning districts. Now, we don't have to, we can prioritize which areas that we want to place the overlay on. We can do things like that, but this is just something that we're going to have to contend with. We're going to have to change some of this base zoning. And, the way things are going with some of these standards, it is down zoning. We are, if you look at some of the standards that we're proposing, especially with respect to some of the building heights, we are technically down zoning because we would be allowing lesser intensity of development. Like for example, within the VMU district right now, the building height max is 50 feet. We're certainly not calling for 5-story buildings or 4-story buildings in that area. So if we go down to 2- or 3-story buildings, that's cutting back some of that development intensity. We will probably very well be looking at changing the amount of uses that are potentially allowed within the underlying zoning districts, and that too can be a down zoning. Alex, anything on that?
You covered the large portion of the background information. Now it's time to.
Oh, we're not there yet.
When you say blocks, are you talking about like a city block like we think about, or are you talking about how you have it blocked out on this
How
map?
they're identified.
I think the way I envision it, and we're still working on it, you see that we have a letter in each of those block areas. So we're going to start building a table of uses and things like that on each of those blocks.
On this, like
Correct.
A block, B block, C block.
Correct. Alex, you want to go over building types? Oh, you can just go.
Before you jump in that, why don't you do the regulating plan? That seems like the
Well,
base document here.
Well,
Jack and I want to get started on the regulating plan.
What's that?
I said, Jack and I want to get started on the regulating.
Yeah, we want to get right to the
Well,
guts of it.
the issue with that, Jack, is I want everybody to understand what each of the building types are. We don't have to go in depth into them, but just so everybody understands the different
Okay.
types that we're proposing.
Never mind.
Shouldn't take but 10 minutes.
Oh, you are making me do
I'm
it.
making you
Okay.
do this. I gotta do this. I gotta do the other. He does. I can't always talk for 3 hours.
All right, so when we do get to the regulating plan, there's a corresponding number there in your key for building type. So here are those building types. Retail, single use, so these are like standalone retail buildings where you kind of have either single or multiple tenants. Within that area, it's typically small-scaled buildings, restaurant shops, might have other centralized amenity spaces. And there's some activity that could help serve other nearby adjacent buildings as well. Typically, a little bit smaller again in height, 1 to 2 stories, a maximum of 3 at the most. If you see some standards there, what we're going to look at, other than just the building types or uses that we'll look at in the regulating plan, it's also where active frontage is shown there. So we'll get into this detail a little bit more once we can, kind of come to some consensus on the uses and the building types there. But the standards are, they're going to be a little more stringent.
That's you.
On what the buildings forms and what they're going to look like on those areas where they're proposed on the active frontage.
And I think that active frontage, as Alex has touched on, really is going to be an important consideration, because we're going to have, there'll be additional design considerations where we have things labeled with active frontage. There's going to be extra fenestration, potentially more doors, entryways, things like that.
Well, and for each one of these building types, there's going to be significantly more detail as far as massing and sizing and lots placements and so forth and so on.
Architectural details.
Okay, this is sort of the overview of building types, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Office, single use, but also could be multi-tenant spaces there. Kind of going to look at same massing as far as the smaller retail there, 1 to 3 stories potentially. General medical offices may be considered, it's something else to work through. Hotel, I think that's pretty well speaks for itself. You'll see that on the regulating plan, kind of where it's proposed and shown, where we've talked about it with the plan thus far. 2 to 3 stories in height. They can also have other accessory components or, a retail restaurant type space, ground floor meeting space, et cetera. Commercial mixed use is typically where you have the lower level, retail or commercial component, residential component, or other offices or spaces upstairs. Multifamily, these are, you kind of think of like your attached condos, sometimes townhomes. Again, if you start looking at where there's going to be an active frontage, there's going to be a little bit more required detail there on the frontage.
We're in the residential almost here. To what extent are we going to be able to actually put together standards for residential that don't run afoul of any NC statutes?
So two-pronged there. One, it depends if it meets the 1 or 2 family code. So the only implications for that would be multifamily. How many units, how tall. Then we have wide latitude in how we can design architectural standards. But our biggest tool that we have is the historic district.
But
So
it doesn't extend everywhere.
No, not everywhere. No, so that's one thing that we need to consider, and why, the existing zoning, the overlay stuff, we need to consider when we're actually trying to implement this into the current PDO or other regulating documents such as the historic district standards.
The other way to handle it as well would be potentially through a conditional zoning, rezoning requirement. So if we're going through and we need to change the zoning for some reason, of course, they'd have to agree to it, we'd have to agree to it. We could ask that they adhere to the architectural guidelines as identified in the form-based code.
If it's a rezoning and it's a conditional rezoning, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned flat roofs quite often in here, by the way. Are we okay on flat roofs in general?
No, it is
Especially not as a primary building.
not as a primary, maybe a shed.
It mentions it quite often as far as all the dwellings could potentially have flat roofs, and some of them implied for other uses, recreation, I wouldn't call it recreation, but, a observatory, a place to sit out on the flat roof.
I think
And maybe more for the non-residential stuff, but.
Okay, we'll just take a look at that,
Yeah,
because it
sure.
is
I mean, and
mentioned
again,
quite
this is a-
often in here.
This is a product we've had with largely not much edits or revisions.
I understand,
for
I understand
months,
where it
yeah.
came from, right.
once we get to the architectural standards, we will have roofing requirements. And I think a primary building, I know, cannot,
Unless it's being used, a non-residential building, at least what we've looked at, unless it's being used specifically to house mechanical equipment, how far back it's got to be, there's a parapet wall.
Right.
when we get to those standards, you'll start to see it, but we'll take a look at that again.
Live work, of course, this is options for buildings that have some sort of ground floor, commercial retail space, office space potentially, residential units above. Single-family attached, kind of like your townhomes, which we'll kind of see a lot of discussion about that along some of the frontage there. Detached, again, a lot of the conversation about that along the Cadell and McCaskill Road side there with the tradition site. This pretty well speaks for itself. You'll see there, again, once we get more into the detail after we get through the types here.
Well, I realize this is a tutorial from the consultant, you know, it's a good outline.
Good start.
It talks to, you know, different types of single-family detached, and in fact, the code on the blocks, as we're going to see, has different types.
But
You know, cottage, manor, and villa. Can you,
I was trying to
other
get
than
to
other than, I think it was the villas have, you know, front-loaded garages compared to the others that don't have it, which, do we need those distinctions, villas and
It really,
manors and?
it really goes to the size of the
cottages?
lot.
Yeah, it's going to be lot size and scale and massing, which, you know, just going to kind of expand on that when I got to the bottom there, is like, you think about the, you know, the escalating up, cottage, villa, manor. As you go down, cottage is going to be smaller and less stringent setbacks and massing, and then it's just going to get, you know, larger as you move down. So the manor, think of the manor maybe R30, villa close to an R10, maybe, something like that.
And when we get into lot standards, you'll see how that comes together.
Okay, it didn't differentiate them that way, it differentiated them in a different form on this document.
It's both lot size, it's
And
how the
architectural
building,
standards, yeah.
it's somewhat, the villa's gonna have, you're right, where the garage is potentially placed, things like
Yeah,
that. So,
okay.
I think we might even talk about porches.
Yeah, my question is whether we needed that distinction.
Once we get to the lot standards, we can have the discussion. If we need to X out one of those buildings, that's fine, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
In large, if you look at it, most of them are going to be, basically all three of them, if we're showing an option as a single-family detached, are all three listed on there, so we can always pare that back. Aaron, that's it?
That's it? All right, now, Jack, now we can get to the regulating plan. Take that off.
Oh, you mean the,
No, make it a little bit bigger. All right.
part with
I like the
key.
size of your pointer.
Almost like we got feedback to make that better. Yeah, I like the yellow, like the bright yellow.
All right, so here we go. This is kind of the land use plan. This is kind of, you know, it forms a basis of, you know, the future zoning and land use form, street type, and all that kind of stuff in the Village Place area. So we'd like to go over it, you know, starting with that core area and start to talk about what that looks like. So let's start with block. Here, I'll take it. I'll drive now.
I'll have might as well get it out, question. These blocks, or however we're going to describe them, are the boundaries of these blocks currently on parcel boundaries? They're not. They could come right through the middle of a parcel. I mean, obviously they do towards the lower part there, but.
I think when they do follow the parcels is where there's not implications there. Like if you look at block L, M, and N, right there where Darren has his cursor in the heart, that's where, again, you'll see more of those standards where we're going to, as development comes through, you've got to put that network in. So then the parcels would follow that.
Well, can we do that? I mean, can we block out this and not be on parcel boundaries?
We're still looking at the mechanics of how that would work. We'd apply it as an overlay, and we've done that in other places in the community. We have split zoning. We have parcels that are split zone. It's not the ideal thing to do.
So these blocks, they're not down to grid coordinates or anything to that effect right now.
I mean, we could describe them. We could probably do a description of each of them.
Well, I know you could, but I'm saying at this point in time I see L, M, and N are definitely parcels that are,
Correct.
as well as P and O are one parcel actually
Correct.
currently.
That's correct.
But if we go up Rattlesnake a little bit, those parcels tend to be a little bit all over the place sometimes.
Oh, there. And these pretty much, I think these pretty much follow the boundaries as well.
Okay.
I mean, we put the streets through here. The street would go somewhere through it.
The worst is going to be A through E. Yeah, that's just going to be where it is.
A looks like it conforms to those,
Where Power Plant Road is now, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, to those 2 or 3 parcels that are in that.
But that
one area.
corner, that L-shaped, and then the brewery.
Yes. Yeah, so you have you have a smaller part, you have a couple little parcels in here. So yeah, I think it does generally conform to that. We can overlay the property boundaries on here. I mean, this is just, again, it's a regulating plan to try and, the mechanics, let us make the mechanics work.
But at some point in time, we have to be reasonably specific. Is that correct?
If we apply it as if we apply it as an overlay, and we include the exhibit as an overlay,
I think that I agree with Jack about the property lines. In practice, it's difficult if those aren't following property lines. And you can see where, I guess, L and M and N are probably property lines. But, you know, if you end up having an area, that third of the parcel is in one zone and 2/3 is in something else,
that's why we're talking about changing the
that's a
baseline.
real problem. So,
But first, we kind of got to generally agree. Well, we haven't gotten near there. We can get the mechanics down pat as we move forward.
Okay. Because then there's the mechanics of the implied roads, which may be on, at this time, not owned property. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the boundaries we can easily adjust as we get closer. But, you know, there's no sense in worried about drawing these with parcel lines if we haven't really gotten to
We're
a
not at that level
consensus.
of precision just yet, okay. At some point, we may have to be, though.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just because once we start getting to that point, then we have to start thinking, how is this going to effectively be administered? And if it can't, then it's useless.
And the basic building block that we can use on there, when we need to get there, is we can describe all these areas. We can describe all these blocks. We can, Matt knows, we can write a description for all this. So, all right. Why isn't this pan? No, I'll use that. All right, so Block A. So Block A, this is the location. You have the Pinehurst Brewery over here. I believe you got EMS over here. I think there's a small office building over here, and there's another office building over here. And then the lion's share of this is in that undeveloped state, or formerly developed state where the laundry was. There's some significant potential issues there because I think you have some wet area going through there. But Block A, we're showing right now, building heights would be a minimum of 2 to 3 stories. And then what we're showing would be building types 1, mixed use, 2, office, and, 1, mixed use, 3, retail, and then 9, the potential hotel. So I'll tee it up for discussion on that, on Block A. What are your thoughts on that? Are we missing something, or what?
And all of that shown as active frontage aside from the McCaskill Road portion of that.
Oh, good point. So we are also showing the active frontage all around that parcel with it. Alex just said it.
Difference between general frontage and active frontage. It's like a square rectangle thing.
No, active frontage, if you go to the left-hand side, additionally, the regulating plan indicates where active frontage is required. That is, where retail or restaurant space, lobbies, or building amenities must be located on the ground floor facing the street.
If you remember, kind of like those general building footprint depictions with the plan where it had them pushed into the corner and had the parking in the rear.
So they could face the street on the general, but it's not required, as it is on active.
There's
Yes,
there's no relief
So,
for it.
so right now you have a couple on the corner where the A is that face the street, right there. Sort of. I mean, they're not right up on it, but they're.
Well, if you look here, let me show a rendering right here. So this is this is creating that, this is active frontage. So you can see, this is kind of what an active frontage would look like. And this is that crossroads where we're trying to get that create that active frontage area in that area. So you can.
You'll have like the street there, and then you'll have the planning zone, then you'll have the pedestrian zone, then you'll have the build-to line.
Correct, and that's the other important consideration about the form-based code is it's not just the building use and type, it's also the relationship of the building to the street and the type of street that's there.
And then, for example, that office building, I'll call it an office building at the corner of Magnolia and McCaskill down here at the corner. In A, it's right at the corner of A.
Yep,
That would become non-conforming, is that correct?
correct.
Darren, can you point for us the lot that is currently zoned hotel permissible? And is it in Block A?
And let me further clarify with Jack a little bit. It would become right now it would become a non-conforming structure because it wouldn't meet those requirements. From a use standpoint, it would depend on the use. If it's an office use, then it would potentially become a non-conforming use. Okay, sorry, Jeremy.
No, I'm sorry, I thought you were complete. So the area or the specific site that's currently zoned hotel permissible that's owned by the village, can we point that out on the map? And is it in Block A currently?
No, it's over here. It's C, D, and E is where the village.
A and B both allow for hotels in these blocks. And by the way, there is a hotel in the B block already, the Manor Inn.
The Manor
Yep,
Inn,
the
okay,
Manor.
so that's actually in B block.
Yep. So you can see this is the village's parcel. So this is all currently zoned VMU. So currently a hotel could locate throughout this entire district. Where we were with the regulating plan, we were proposing to further limit the ability of that use to locate in other areas of the regulating plan. Hotel would, VMU is limited by height right now. The overall height of currently in VMU district is 50 feet. Again, this is another thing. This would be another limiting factor. So it would lower the potential overall height of a building to be constructed in that area.
But for clarity, that would change currently the hotel site. We're mentioning that we would possibly change the zoning for that site.
Correct.
If we pay attention to this, but then we would also allow the use in another area.
Correct. But what I have to make a note to send you is a table that I'll send you an example table of how we see it working, A, B, C, D. There'll be different uses, permitted, not permitted, things like that. So right now, what we were showing is, and we if you look at the renderings right now all show the hotel right here at this crossroads, which is partially on the county's utility site right here. We expanded that to include it on the other side of the building, which could be potentially where that small office building is, where that Punch Jones property is. So, by adding that in, it's just a discussion point. Do we think that's an appropriate land use in that area, or do we want to more narrowly focus it into this crossroads area? So I guess that's a point of discussion. Right now, it can locate anywhere within that district, anywhere within the VMU district. What the regulating plan would do is more narrow that up. So we say this site is the appropriate location for a hotel. So we're being very prescriptive with this plan.
I think my concern would just be about the size that would be permissible. Talk about the building heights, but possibly the mass and how it may disrupt, because you got some unused land there currently, and how that could obviously disrupt our current plans, of what we would like the frontage along Magnolia to look like, as well as McCaskill, and as well as how we would want that infill to work if those streets were created throughout that area. To me, it's something that could possibly come in and disrupt a lot of those plans, depending on the size and scale of any sort of hotel that came into that area.
Correct.
I think that's our concern, or my concern, and I think that's something that's worth considering.
And you can kind of see that here, Jeremy. This is where that hotel is kind of located, is right here.
Yeah.
So you're implying that you prefer the hotel to be restricted to Block B, is that correct?
Well, I want to talk through it a little more, and I want some input from everybody else, but I think, I don't want to go down the path of, hey, we just don't want a hotel for the sake of a hotel, but what's in my mind of is if a hotel was to be one of the first uses to come to this area, there's a larger possibility in my mind that it would impact what our overall plans would be for steps 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so now all of a sudden, we're changing a lot of zoning, possibly on the conditional use, that type of thing, and just want to make sure that we
Well,
kind of
I think
forecast
you
that
have
as
a
a
good point
board.
there, yeah.
So that would be my concern, and if we've already got it in Block B, Block A is obviously the space where it could come in today. So I think that's something worth to talk about.
The entire space it could come in today.
Correct, yeah.
Pretty much anywhere within this core area that's zone VMU, anywhere it's VMU, it could potentially locate there.
I'm confused here. I thought if we're talking about a hotel, the overlay would restrict it to one or two of these blocks,
Yes.
wherever we say, okay.
Yes.
I'm kind of with Jeremy on this, the more I think about it, that maybe keeping the hotel to one block is more appropriate rather than allowing for down on A and that, actually in that valley, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'm looking at kind of a little bit of back and forth here a little bit. I want to make sure that my thinking is correct. That's obviously the largest possibility of a largest scale building that we would have in that area. And with all of our envisioning and all of our forecasting and our horizon scanning and the pictures that we have, all of that could really be disrupted pretty quickly with something like that.
Exactly.
Show 'em-
I think
can
that-
you show in your cursor where the Pinehurst Brewing Company is, Darren? You can just about take that little portion likely out of consideration of it being located right there.
But I do think we have a conversation on whether or not that use is something we want to permit for that area, specifically that we have a very large piece of land that currently could happen.
See if you can't kind of generally show the boundary there, Darren, of Block A.
Block A is
if you
generally
can.
like that. Block A is generally going through here.
It kind of comes out right there at the phase two, at the phasing line of the greens, if you will, and bisects it through there. So that might help with a more perspective of what the existing conditions are there. The orient,
Acres there, plenty of room for a big
Yeah.
hotel.
it is. So you
3
you
acres
could take
where-
the
in A or
general
B,
frontage.
in A or B.
Everything, left over in A, taking out the brewery. Is about
Well, if you
3
took, I don't think the brewery is going to disappear on it.
No, I mean, in addition to the brewery, there's about 3 acres up there.
So
Really? That much, you think?
So that corner there, the frontage along the Magnolia and McCaskill roadside obviously would be the largest concern for that type of use being located, or where it being located.
I think that would disrupt what our current plans
Sure.
are for McCaskill Road as the frontage there, and I think it possibly would disrupt a little bit of the use for the other remaining area.
So that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to, if
I
we
think-
can visualize the areas where we don't want it, see if there's a balance that's even left. And if there's not, then
I think we want to be really careful about allowing that use in that area.
I think Jeremy's right in the sense that, a large structure would overpower any small retail and/or mixed-use professional and so forth.
It's going to be more mass.
In
there's
the
no doubt.
area, the mass would be very large for the particular area.
You're correct. I mean, it's going to be a larger building. I mean, you're probably thinking.
That would tend to be larger.
And tend to be a larger, even a small boutique hotel is going to be large. So, yeah, would it overpower this area over here? Would it potentially overpower something over here? So maybe this, where you're kind of in the valley down here, you're at one of the lower points, maybe this is the appropriate location for that. And
I'd say a
maybe
prudent
nine
step
is,
on our
maybe
behalf
nine
as
is
a
not the appropriate use within this block.
board. May not be a good use for it.
I don't know, it doesn't seem to me that we need that much land that permits hotels at all. I mean, I don't know who's going to really build there, a hotel.
Well, I'm also, in my envisioning, I'm thinking about, not that this is a 50-year plan, but it's also, there's a lot of steps involved. It's a 1-year plan, it's a 5-year plan, it's a 10-year plan, 15, 25. And with our current market and the things that are strong today, what is something that could disrupt our further plans? And that's something that could very easily happen very quickly. And it's something we got to consider. And, and of course, we go down this road, the term boutique and how much restriction we can put on the looks of it, of course, is a little different today. And that's a term that's totally debatable on what really that means. So as one of our neighboring communities is finding out. So something we want to be considerate of.
Well, the other consideration is if you allow, how many small hotels, or if there is such a thing, do you want in this general area? I mean, is it appropriate to have more than one? Because if you have multiple blocks that allow, each of which allows a hotel, there's no reason that someone might capitalize on that, which they should if they want to. However, this is the opportunity to restrict the area to like one hotel, essentially. Well, or at least one area with a hotel bias.
It's the area that, and we've gone through this is the area that we feel as a community is the appropriate area. If a hotel is going to locate in this area, this is the appropriate area that we feel as a community is the appropriate location for a hotel. And I think we can make that work, and we're fine with making that work, and that's why, I think the renderings all show that hotel right at this crossroads. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think we got to.
Well, what did we agree upon or disagree upon here?
Yeah, well,
We,
I was just going to mention, I think that, certainly the hotel companies and people who build them, they're worried about how much money they're going to make, of course. And so how many rooms, as much as possible, how large, as much as possible. So, no, I think the odds are it's a small boutique hotel that what we envision, the chances of that happen are very slim.
You're right, and from an economies of scale, I mean, you're probably looking at 30 to 40, something like that at least. So from a consensus standpoint, in Block A, right now we have mixed use, and we have retail. Because again, we're trying to get that active vibe at that pedestrian-oriented development. So,
Leave 9 out of it.
so the general feeling with the group is 9 shouldn't be included in this?
Yes.
Did you say it should not be
Could
included?
not be, sorry.
Yeah,
Could
okay.
not be?
I agree with that.
How
Not,
do you
should
feel
not be.
different? Okay. I mean, is there any other?
As long as we allow for it in
We do.
another block, yeah.
And that's important, I'm glad we think that a hotel could locate in this area. And Block B, unless we identify another block, would be a location, but no, I'm
More appropriate.
correct.
Good segue into Block B.
Is there any of,
An hour in.
are we?
Yes.
Not bad. 1 hour per decision, we can get there.
It's going to pick up.
getting honed in now.
Could we have the conversation on whether building type number 4 is appropriate for A? Should we?
Which is a
Conversation.
live-work unit. And you can see we're making considerations for live-work elsewhere within the regulating plan area. So if you go to Block D, so if you take in Power Plant Road, we envision Block D as a potential location for that. Block C is a potential location for that. I guess if you wanted to do, if a live-work unit would develop, I mean, it is live-work is essentially a mixed-use style building.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, Darren, I mean, I read, live-work building type as redundant compared to the other building types because they all allow, residential above and retail and/or, office. It seemed redundant to even have that building type, to be honest with you.
I think the difference was live work did allow for office space.
Well, the other thing about a live-work, the design on a live-work unit, it's a vertical unit. So it's a little bit different. Mixed use can have a little bit different floor plate.
Yes, but professional office can have, retail on the first floor and
I'm just thinking about the design of it, with the way live-work, it's similar to almost like a townhouse style development, but it's commercial on the first floor.
I just didn't see the differentiation, but
Let me,
I'll get it.
I will work on that. We'll work on that. So, but Jeremy raises a good question. Is a live-work style system, that townhouse looking, could that be appropriate in Block A?
I think we have it so many other places throughout the village area there. And I think it kind of fits, possibly could fit with some of the uses that we're envisioning for that area. So just something of consideration.
Okay. And I think when you look at a lived work, it might be something like, I don't know, accountant's office. I'm gonna just put it out there, a watch repair shop, just.
A cobbler?
A cobbler, a whip maker, I don't know. So yeah, just, some trade thing. So, all right, let's move on to block B then.
I'm glad that wasn't, yeah.
Taylor. You're correct. Block B. All right, let's move on to Block B, as Alex noted. So Block B, this is the location, Block B is where you have the telco company that's right over here. Community Road it's all developed along here, so it's, there's discussion as whether we need to actually apply the form-based code along here because it's already developed, but we can have a discussion later. This really is the undeveloped portion because you have the telco and then you have the water tank site. So that is right. So what we're talking about right here, this is Block B, really, and we didn't get out to the community, but this is the lion's share of Block B.
And that parking lot next to the brewery is actually a village
Street.
road. Is that
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, make sure we understand that.
How do they get to use that? For park?
On-street parking.
That's technically what it's.
That's how they were able to meet the parking requirement to go through, yeah.
Is that on a plat somewhere?
Oh, yeah, Spur Road or Power Plant Road, yep.
The line that's in GIS does not match. And obviously GIS is not totally accurate, but does Power Plant Road actually follow that alignment, or is it different in its deed? That would be my question.
I don't know. I really don't. But it is deeded through here. It is deeded all the way up to Community Road.
Because GIS shows their property line extending across the street. I'm looking at it, yeah.
Could be an easement.
So why not on could you pull the plan back up, please? It looks like we're assuming everything's going to be facing kind of towards the brewery there on the active. Why wouldn't you face the outward streets?
Here?
Yes.
I think because this is going to be this is still residential. Well, you have the telco right here, right? So nothing's going to change with the telco.
That's not going anywhere.
Got the manor.
Then you have the manor. So this block frontage is essentially static. So nothing's going to likely change here.
The telephone, I don't know, they're actively in there?
Yes.
Or-
Yeah, there's a lot of equipment in there. I think, that's not a use that's going anywhere.
I think it's
Landlines,
Pardon me?
as long as we have landlines.
I think they use them to store
Internet.
batteries, matter of fact. I think because they don't have limited area where they can store these massive.
But if that building was ever up for redevelopment, wouldn't you want it to face the active thoroughfare where people would be walking to and from the core?
Well, that is part of the, I guess, concern that we've had about, you have residential across the street, you've got R10 zone properties here, and you've got existing residential here. So would you want to focus that activity this way to the west, or would you want to try and, if it ever developed, focus this way to the north? But you're right, that building, the way it sits, right here.
I mean, you could develop the front of that into multiple subunits and put front street access off that.
We wouldn't prohibit it.
Yeah.
And I think the intent of the plan, Darren, back on the regulating plan, was to really put a focus on that. You're right there. That show the other rendering, the ground level.
That's what, my thinking is just, again, if we're trying to pull people down there, you got to have something to pull them down
Right.
there.
Start.
And
The residential is not a concern to me. That fight has been fought, and
well, I said it's residential.
live with it.
No, it's whether you think that this should be an active frontage here, and
Yeah.
we can tee that up for discussion.
Walk out of the manor and they're walking down, depending on development, they could walk the other way, but the closest, even
Right there.
that, walking down Magnolia.
I've walked that several times, and I've tried to have that that discussion with myself, how do we better connect this with more active frontage? Definitely something on that building would help. The manor kind of draws you in. You really don't, because once you get here, you can see the brewery. The manor will draw you in. It's where you get lost in this zone between, you know, past the Pine Crest into this area where there's not a lot of residential use, and it's really dark at night. But again, we're not requiring it in this area, but we can certainly, we could do that. What are your thoughts as we go around the table? So we would actually put a red, you know, we would make this a red frontage. I don't think it hurts because I don't see that going through a period of redevelopment, but that doesn't mean it won't burn down, landlines go away, you know, something like that. I think you're right. If something would happen, it would help draw you down that area and create that active street frontage.
That's just one man's opinion.
And you could even consider having it up to right there where his cursor is at the intersection where those 3 R10 lots are, because that is, based on our aerials here, that lines right up with the CenturyLink property. And then the manor's right next to it.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
So as far as active,
Yeah.
So you're going to pull the active frontage halfway up that street, is that what you're saying?
yes, I think that's what Alex is saying.
To try to
Just an
incorporate
option,
some
yeah.
type of
It-
incentive for any redevelopment of the CenturyLink? to,
And it would put it at that intersection there, right, at that other corner with the power plant road.
And remember what the active frontage does is required, it's where retail or restaurant space, lobbies, or building amenities would be located, so it's not like offices. So it's something that is more active, something that would, you know, people can see as they're going down, you've seen some, you know, lights, people, things like that.
does active frontage support any sort of pedestrian areas from a walkway standpoint?
Yeah,
Because
when
I
we
think
get to that,
something of importance from that area also, considering,
the hardscaping, and I've mentioned that too, I think.
Done a little bit of that there.
I know it was well needed for a couple of reasons. One, the water, but then two, I think that was the travel point, was down the middle of the road for a lot of pedestrians until that walkway was.
I mean, if
put in
you're
place.
walking, I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No, I'm sorry.
If you're walking down from here, you know, you get by the telco building, and there's an opportunity to improve the environment along here. It's kind of a stale environment. You got this outside storage area that's not very aesthetically pleasing. The building, there's nothing really, it's got a bunch of bricked up. Well, there's some opportunity to do either some landscaping or some hardscaping, things like that, to improve the aesthetic along here. And that's, again, getting beyond where we are right now, but I'm okay with adding the active frontage here. It really says that if it goes through a period of redevelopment, you have to have active frontage. Okay, consensus? Anybody say no? No? All right. Building uses, 1, mixed use. 3, retail. 7 is wrong, just pull that off. 7 is wrong. We don't want SFD villas in there. 9 is a hotel, and I think we just talked through that, and we talked for that as the potential location. The other one we didn't talk about is multiple family. Could multiple family locate in there? In anybody's opinion? It could currently locate in there. I'm just saying, do we think that that's appropriate use in that particular area? We do allow for the mixed use, which is multiple family to some extent. But what are our thoughts on having 10 in that particular area?
What kind of density restrictions could we provide on top of that?
We'd have to look,
Past that, okay, just talking about use.
So when you say the words associated with the numbers for building type, that's pulling from the current zoning categories, so you're, right,
no, it's pulling for, we're gonna have to play with the zoning categories moving forward, but we're gonna use this as the basis for those discussions. But we're pulling, that 1, 3, 9 are pulling from the building type, off the left part of the page there.
Can we take a look at the zone view as well, again, as we talk about number 10?
Which one?
The existing zoning?
No, the drone view, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So So that, the answer to that question makes me think, do we need to, I mean, y'all have already looked at this, do we need, there's a lot of permitted uses in village mixed use, and we're saying we're only want to put 3 in this. Are there any others that
That's
we
another
should-
task.
Is that down the road, or, I mean, we're putting a list together now, of building types, but like,
When we build that table, that will come clear. and
Okay.
that'll be one
so
of
it
the
can
ones.
still be clarified beyond
Correct.
this list?
Correct.
I couldn't support a number 10 in that area, mainly because of, again, the development portion of that would go to the extreme of as much as it could and disrupt other areas that we have around that.
So you could not?
I couldn't.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah,
with you.
it would be too disruptive, I think. I mean, why I wanted to see this is I really wanted to take a picture of the current multifamily that we have there and try to see where it would fit, and it definitely could fit, and I think that, again, if this is what we want to create, that's a disruptive force that could be,
Okay.
and of course, it's unpopular, so.
Is that the general consensus? Everybody have a contravailing view?
From where I've, where I've been, mixed use, you have commercial on the bottom,
Beautiful.
like townhomes on the top.
We're getting him on. Hey, Alfred, hold on. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
From where I've been, in the planning realm, in terms of mixed use, you can have commercial on the bottom and then have residential on the top, like townhomes. I think that would be appropriate in Block B.
Think it would not?
I think it will,
It would be.
yeah.
So.
Because of a mixed use standpoint, like I said, commercial on the bottom and townhomes on the top.
And we're allowing for that.
Yeah, so that would be
allow for
number
that.
4, is that correct?
That,
Darren, or what number
I think there's a greater, I think we'll look back and see if we're going to look at lumping 1 and 4 kind of.
Okay. Well, no, and I certainly agree with that, because I think it also fits in with a lot of the other uses that we already currently have in that area.
Of course, you're correct.
Um,
With that question, I'll get scolded. So what is, and maybe I just blanked out, so what is the difference between the mixed use sort of stacked living above, office below, and the live work?
The live work units are more like townhouses, so they're a vertical unit. So that, and they're vertical, they're more of they probably have a narrow floor plate. We're talking, probably could be 20 feet wide, 25 feet wide. I'm trying to, I thought we had a pretty good example. Take an example of the building types and look at the building, kind of look at the building type shown under live work. And then compare it to the page on, compare it to the, that's a good idea, sorry. Stupid, sorry.
But there again, that's something we would dial down a little bit more if we.
So you can see this, so if you see this image.
Yep.
So you can see how it's a narrow building, it's a narrow use building. You can see all that, you can see all these bays, things like that. Those are all separate uses. There's probably a property line there as well. But when you go into something like a traditional mixed use, you can't see, this is all one big building.
Yeah.
So it's more like that. So that's kind of the difference. It's up to us to maybe work that out a little bit more, but that's the kind of the general difference is that the live work is a separate unit in and of itself per building. And you generally would develop that in units of 3 to 7 units, minimum, something like that. So that's the difference.
How about a bed and breakfast?
That's a use type.
The use type, yeah. But that's a use type within a single family, generally within a built single family home.
Or lodging and
Oh, I'm aware.
so do we want to, it wouldn't be allowed right now with this short
It
list.
would not. But, yeah,
We don't want
You
that.
couldn't go in the hotel district.
nope, it's not a hotel.
Bed and breakfast doesn't always have to come out of an existing home.
Generally, you are in some
Yes, they
type of
do, but
existing.
not always.
And traditionally, they're in some older period home, one of those large old manors or estates.
Can't plop down a bed and breakfast in the middle of the village, can you?
I believe you can, in a single-family district. You just have to meet the standards.
Jack, what's the name of the one there at the corner of Magnolia and
Oh, that one across?
was
Was it
rezoned?
VGA?
Across from the Rezook's building over there. Can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, can I-
One that the country club just took over? It's me.
It's across, was that Chinquapin from that? All right, I can't think of the name of it.
They don't, realistically, the only place that you would put probably a bed and breakfast, I'm just saying,
Built as a hotel.
conceptually would be across Magnolia here.
From a regulation standpoint, how much leeway or how much breadth do we have in defining something like a bed and breakfast?
Well, we already do, I mean, we
We just
already
need-
have a bed and breakfast defined, within the PDO, so we have a definition of what that is. And I think the general definition is generally, it says it's in a built single-family home, doesn't it? I think that's.
Well, it's where the owner is
That
occupied
too, correct.
there all the time. It's
And
not
it's a
like not like you're leasing it out and you're not there.
Correct, and it's a minimum of 3 units, maximum of 7 or 9.
Now, I think upon that subject, in the PDO today, it's underneath a different use, right? Underneath the kind of a lodging,
Yes, it's considered a lodging use.
so we would have to move it out separately.
I don't have that table in front of me right now.
That's just why I was looking at Matt, he always has this pulled.
But I think it's an R1, not R1.
So now, the table,
Category from
R210.
hotel or motel?
Not in the hotel district, of course.
so in the end, there'll be permitted uses by building type, and of course, then we'll have all those specs on the building types.
Block, correct.
By block, within block. And then within each block will be a table of permitted uses, or will the permitted uses be per building type?
No, it'd be within the block. So this is the block, so you're going to have a building type, retail,
Right.
mixed use, and then you'll have the type of uses that can locate within.
Uses within that
Within
block, within that overlay
So think
sub-block.
of the blocks, think of each of these blocks almost as a mini zoning district.
No, I see examples of that
Yep,
in
that what
Asheville,
Yep.
With the table of uses
Correct.
per block, yeah.
That's correct. That's why I would envision it going on with this particular, how we're doing it.
Okay.
So does retail include restaurant or?
Yes.
The bed and breakfast is still lodging, hotel, and it fits almost all of these standards that are listed under hotel. I mean, I could go and build a new bed and breakfast that would look like it was always there, like the two-story building next to the hotel. I mean, instead of
And there are appropriate locations for a bed and breakfast. The
I'd
core
still have the retail on the bottom.
is not a bed and breakfast then.
There's going to be a step in this process where we will look at the definition of that and maybe others and have the chance to redefine. There is,
We're going to be we have to look at the definitions.
we have to look at the definition. I don't know if that actual bed and breakfast would be highlighted, but that would be an opportunity at that point in time for us to bring it
I mean,
forward.
I think
and
from a-
define maybe it's something regular. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Well, for us, it's a type of land use. So, it's a land use category. It is a defined land use. And the question is, when you're looking at your traditional bed and breakfast, the way we envision it, the way we see it, it's generally in a low intensity, low residential property, and it's low intensity. It wouldn't do anything to add to in this core area, it wouldn't do anything to add to that feeling that we're
Yes,
trying to create.
I could call it my boutique hotel,
ahead.
right? And I
Call it
serve
that.
breakfast, so that would work.
But doesn't that still have to go through, the zoning process, and we have to get approved?
Everything goes through the zoning
That's
process.
kind of why there's checks and balances.
Right.
I'm just thinking about how it all fits in.
On the list,
so.
you couldn't even.
All right, we can all, we can park that for now.
Yeah.
And we'll park the bed and breakfast discussion. We'll do a little bit more research on it. What was that? What, consensus to include bed and breakfast in here? All right,
Just to have this, because if it's
Well, we're-
not, then
but we're not there. We're,
We're just looking at 1, 3, and 9 right now, right?
yes. Correct. Correct, we're just looking at 1, 3, and 9 right now.
Fall under 9, then we've got the option to.
Louise, where it might work as a bed and breakfast would be along Community Road in one of those existing buildings that are currently along Community Road where they're small scale. So that where you could put it in. Correct? All right, 1, 3, and 9, no 10? Okay. Block C. Block C is building height 1 to 2. What we're showing is, this is the area that's partially zoned Village Cottage Professional. This part of C is within the public services area. And what we're showing is mixed use, retail, and live work. So that, I don't know if that shows up very good on the aerial, but you're kind of looking into this area. I don't have a shot out to Community Road, but I can show you.
Why aren't we allowing office in there? It's not different.
Right here. That's what we're here to talk about. So right here is really what we're talking about. There's an.
At the fronts.
I think the transition to the residential area directly across the street is important. I mean, we want to be sensitive to the transition of the higher density within A and B or more activity and
Okay,
the less intense residential areas that surround this particular area.
it's important consideration. So we don't have the mix right, we need to add office. Office would be less intense. Village Cottage Professional, the Village Cottage Professional currently does allow dwelling multi-use or dwelling mixed use within that particular district. So within this area, you can currently do a mixed use. So I think we might have been building upon what the existing zoning was, but if we don't feel mixed use is appropriate in this area that you point out is adjacent to a developed residential area, we should have that discussion right now. So we're showing mixed use, retail, and live work.
And if you also look at the corresponding building height in 1 to 2, that might knock some of that
Right.
off, and it's keeping that scale down a little bit as well.
And you're moving the street intensive activity, via the red lines more into the core of the, I don't know what you call this area, commercial area or some busy area or,
Yeah,
pedestrian focused area.
active area.
The core of the new core, is that what you're saying?
So someone mentioned earlier, there's some offices there already. I'm trying to envision which offices may be there, what type of
There's an
offices.
accountant office there. Is there a financial office off? They're
Well, it's a little more,
bigger than that.
Is it in a,
he was there too, and,
okay. Maybe I'm thinking the wrong road.
So office along Community Road, probably, we're not requiring any active frontage on Community Road.
Right.
I don't think office is a bad use in that area. I mean, we already have the governor with the active frontage to the north, so I think offices wouldn't be inappropriate in that particular area, so that's.
Well, I think currently today, most of those buildings along that frontage at one point in time, if were residential spaces, right? So is the offices that we're talking about currently, are they in old residential spaces? Okay, they're not. Okay, I need to go look.
I think one's newer, yeah.
There's the Boy Scouts of America to the left of the old fire department there.
Yeah, they are, yeah. They'd be the left of that access road between the two.
And it looks like those were old houses, that Boy Scouts building and maybe the
Care Cottage, I think, is located in one, yeah.
housing at one point.
Okay, so we're talking about the possibility of some old residential homes becoming an office of some sort of professional office type.
Or them transitioning out to a new build and into one of those other uses. So
would that give any sort of right when it comes to remodeling any of those homes or anything?
I'd have to look at how our
Only
non-conforming,
concern.
if it's a conforming
This would,
use.
since this would apply to the whole block, so to speak, the only thing with office is it isn't really an active pedestrian-oriented activity compared to the retail and restaurant and so forth we're envisioning in the core of the core area. And if an office were to dominate that area, it would sort of deaden is the wrong word, but it would
You're not, I mean, it's not,
be less active in the sense of retail and/or restaurant.
other than Manor, there's not a lot of active, you have pretty much all non-residential on there. It's not very active.
So
Oh,
what's
I know.
stopping, for redevelopment, what's stopping, I mean, if it is mixed use, why can't somebody just open an office in one of the mixed use units?
Can.
Yeah.
But
So I,
On it. So why not standalones, what you're saying?
yeah, I wouldn't put strictly office in it, leave it mixed use, they can open up a little office and upstairs or downstairs or.
So you're not completely limiting someone
right.
from opening an office.
On a minimum height, like a mixed use has to be two-story, but an office could be single.
yeah, the minimum height that we're showing in here is the maximum height is 2 stories in this area. And that was where we were trying to be, cognizant of the context across the street. Because you do have a lot of 1-story, single-family across the street, so we didn't want to have a 3-story dominating over that side of the street.
Yeah, I think that's my concern is that I see no problem with office in that area. I think we got to have consideration what's across the street. And if we're talking about residential homes becoming a professional office, that's one thing. But if we're talking about extending any sort of zoning rights to anybody who could either wipe one down, build something different, or do any sort of remodeling to it that would change a lot of that area, I think that's something that we got to consider as we add that use.
Okay, so that would be 2, so we're looking at adding 2 to this area.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Anybody have any strong objections to adding 2 into this block, into Block C? As a standalone? Jack?
Sold.
I was going to say going once, twice, let's go.
I know Louise is on board. She recommended it. We'll get there. We're gonna get there. So Matt, you're okay? All right, so we're adding 2.
I figure if you can actually get this road built in there, it's,
Those roads are both platted and they're partially in.
Well, I think somewhere if that road gets built, we have to name one of them Alex Cameron and the other one Darren Birch Way. I think they need to be, somehow, they need to be named after them too.
I know the folks at Moore County addressing, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't have, I think we have to. I think it's a.
All right, Block D.
Cameron Way.
Let's move on to Block D. Now, Block D, we're showing, and this is, let me pull up the aerial. Block D, this is pretty much Block D up here. You see Hughes? Hughes is up in this area. Let me, oh, damn it.
Right there.
Right there. So this is pretty much, this is Block D right in here. It's all pretty, and it really is pretty much all the Hughes and some of our property, the village's property, the public services. What we're showing over here is the potential for mixed use, retail, and live-work units. Live-work units could work well along that new road. Let me get back to that. Live-work could work well along this street here, probably on this side. Could probably put some over here. And we're actually showing on the rendering. If you show on the rendering, you can see this rendering. This is where we're actually showing live work. We're showing live work over here. You can see it's kind of live work on this side.
Yeah, the artist thing doesn't show the open space plan there.
The open space is kind of right here, Jack. It doesn't.
Yeah,
you're right.
oh,
Doesn't-
it is, okay, never mind. I see it.
All right,
But for the spot, so for the area of the Hughes Supply, I think someone mentioned at some point in time, there's been some interaction with them, and they just signed a new lease, I believe. Did I hear that
Yeah.
wrong or anything? It's going to be long-term.
That's our knowledge.
They're grandfathered into the area. They've been here for 40 years.
Correct.
So they're part of the community from that standpoint. Are they grandfathered in if the road comes in? Are they grandfathered any further with any sort of zoning from the outside storage standpoint? All today, all that is truly grandfathered, and there would be no changes within that grandfathering standpoint. Is that
We
right?
choose to amortize something away.
Okay, so unless they remove, they just can't add.
They could add under our existing non-conforming rules, right?
I mean, first of all, if they are truly become non-conforming, then what parameters can they?
I mean, I think there's a lot of fairness involved. I mean, I think, I'm coming from a standpoint of fairness, right? So they're
Yes.
here, that's why I mentioned they've been here for 40 years. I mean, goodness, that's their spot.
I think we're all saying that.
Yeah, yeah. But after we build the road, of course, we think of what we would like to have done with the area. But do they own that land, or is there, okay, so they're renting it, so there's another owner involved. And so I think that's something of consideration as well, what we put into use. Certainly when that owner gets approached from a sales standpoint from that area of property.
Really, that road's right.
Money does talk, right? So.
If he's got a shed on there and some kind of windstorm or whatever, and it blows it apart, he's allowed to build it back.
It's destroyed by means of acts of God, yes.
Well, today, you could not build this use
No. We
at
couldn't
all.
build a
You could have
road.
the outside storage. I just want to make sure, tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm speaking just out of. You couldn't do the outside storage, and certainly in that degree. You couldn't have these type of buildings, all of that, so.
I mean, I can tell the road already goes around it, the future
does.
road. So
Because it's the, kind of the vision you'd want to see in the future.
You can't vision that it's always going to be the case, but it is a consideration that it's
Yeah, it
in there.
could burn, it could burn down, and they might not want to,
Oh,
But I'm just saying, there's all kinds of acts of God that can occur.
I will, again, I don't want to get in their business, but one of the caveats is if, with them not owning that property, I mean, I think that, if they did own the property, and if I was part of that business, then one of the things I would be thinking about would be selling that property and building right outside of town and taking a nice little bit of profit and building a certain style of building that would be conducive to the business and be
So
attractive.
would
the market-
mixed-use retail or live-work have some sort of negative future impact? Or are there others there?
And really, the market has not shifted yet because the plans have not taken place. We haven't put a hotel here. We haven't created this vibe. The building across the street hasn't been created. So there's really there's not a lot of economic incentive for somebody to come in here and pour and pay a lot of money for this use. People have tried to do that, but it's not there yet.
Add any multifamily in there or hotel in there, that changes the whole dynamic of what.
Correct. Might be one of the later parcels developed.
have it as you have it, if it's needed,
And 3 and 4? Block D. All right, Block E. This is
Yes.
generally, this is a spot where, I think there's an existing single-family house on this. This is also part of the public services complex. We have our parking lot over here. What we're showing in this block is 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is office, retail, live, work, and single-family townhouse. At heights of 1 to 2 stories. Any concerns with that? Are we missing anything? What are your thoughts? Again, as you can see, we're trying to lower the intensity as we get towards the edges of that core area, especially as you're getting closer to that residential neighborhood across the street. We're allowing for a variety of uses. I mean, the mixed, and we don't even have mixed use located in there, so we're trying to get lower scale, lower intensity.
Well, I mean, the likely scenarios, if this in fact would happen this way, is it wouldn't be all of these, it would be probably one of these.
Correct, and that's why we put all those options in there, because
Yeah, got it.
How big is that piece of property? How big is the guesstimate? How many acres do you think? 10?
how many? 3, if that. Yeah, 3 if that. So you're not gonna have a lot of development intensity here. But you do, what we should all note and talk about right now is, the active frontage, where we're still trying to show that active frontage. So again, that active frontage, if something happens, if it's a retail use, right? If it's a retail use, if it's even if it's if it's an office use, live, work, a townhouse it wouldn't apply to, but you see where we're trying to create that.
So, well, one second. So F across the street is Clark Chevrolet
That's
Cadillac,
correct.
correct? So you're asking someone, should they wish to develop in this area, that they must front the other way, and they must have an active street activity? Any development, is that what you're saying?
If it's, yes.
Well, it couldn't be in townhouses, I mean,
Towards the left side?
Well, not townhouse, it wouldn't apply to residential.
Like just over an acre, like an acre and a quarter.
I think my only concern is that each of those 4 uses in reality, have a different frontage capability. And
That's why-
I think that's the difficult thing to think about here. I mean, it's not that, I don't think any of them are incorrect. I think they're all fit. I think the thought, my process is a townhome frontage is going to look a lot different than an office frontage that's going to go in there. And I think that's the consideration, right?
But look at it also from this standpoint. If we're requiring active frontage over here, wouldn't you want active frontage to match across from the other active frontage?
yeah.
Gaskell Street, I think that's.
So it's not the front of Clark, it's at least
Front of Clark is over here.
side, so.
I'm sort of baffled by the townhouse in E. It just looks like it was stuck in there. Is that what I'm looking at? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I mean, I think we looked at because it wasn't a very large lot, I think we looked at, maybe townhouses could be appropriate in that area, so I think we added it on there. If we don't think it's appropriate, I think you could fit it in there, but is that the use that you want in that particular area? That's a great question that we need to have right now.
Well, I don't know if it hurts. I don't know if we're just trying to find a spot that we can fit some townhouses in, or throw that use a bone, or just to make sure we use them and sell in consideration.
Well, realistically, F, there's a couple things on F. Clark is not going, I don't think Clark's going anywhere for the longest time either. But if you look at E, the townhouses, I mean, you could put it's a small enough parcel that you could probably effectively put some townhouses on there. Now, what would that do to what we're trying to create in that area? And it really would not, if you're trying to create that active environment, then maybe 5 is not the appropriate use in that area at this time.
I would say I agree, because we're already hearing the whispers of, well, we're encroaching on top of residential. So if we put stacked townhomes in there, that's just going to bring that conversation even further into the active area we're trying to perpetuate. So if you have a row of townhomes in there, who are all staring now at that active street, are they going to complain that there's more retail going in front of that? I mean, I just feel like we're pushing more of that in. I would say strip the townhome out of there altogether, but that's my opinion.
And we added it on because we started by trying to add more uses so we could have this conversation and pull them out as we had this discussion.
Well, but it's the same token, I'm talking on both sides of my mouth here, because I think at the same token, I think it's not what it does to E, it's how it interacts with D and C.
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I think, we're talking about 3 acres. Stacked is the key word that you're talking about, how high we could go and how many. And
1 acre.
what does it do? And I think that's what's in my mind. Is it wrong? Is it right? How does it interact? And I think that's something for us to consider.
Well, then, by that token as well, we should probably consider taking out that office function as well.
It's actually less than an acre, because there's a What's that on the corner there of Dundee and McCaskill? Is it a residence?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
little
there
house
is.
that's next to our office there. is where the- Yeah. Well, no,
It's a small ranch.
it's right up against our public services office building there.
That's the house that used to have the big wedge
the
in
golf
front of
club
it.
on
Yes.
Yard art.
It is shoehorned in that lot. All that is just,
And again, this is contemplated potential, that house comes out of there, the market changes.
Right at an
shifts.
acre.
Sure.
so we'll take 5 out. What about leaving 2 in then if we're going to be considered of the activation with D and C?
Well, I guess you're right, because it says where active frontage, under the office, single use, where active frontage is indicated by the regulating plan, the ground floor frontage elevation shall be activated with retail and restaurant space.
There you go.
Active frontage is towards the center of that developed area. The consideration that we would have with the residential houses across the street, in reality, is minimal. Well, I mean, the consideration's a lot, but I think the impact could be minimal there. And I think my concern would really be what would be on the back. You know, this isn't our topic today, but then we talk about parking, we talk about all of that. You know.
That's another governor, is the parking. Where
Yeah,
there's-
so,
You build a parking deck.
could you really, how many townhomes could you really put there is where I'm going, and
Terrain.
so.
Yeah.
A lot of townhomes there, I bet.
I like,
Look at it.
I like Jeremy's point. I mean, we really don't really think about what's in the block. It's really how it interacts with the rest. So,
I'd be concerned about the backside. Actually, I'm still concerned a little bit about McCaskill coming around, what's behind it. You know, we consider parking along that street a little bit behind of whatever's there. When we talk about future development opportunities for 3 acres, it's not going to attract a lot of eyes.
1 acre.
1 acre? Is that what it's, am I down to 1? Did you say 1? Not going to attract a lot of eyes. So,
But it could be a little boutique.
could you all clarify for us?
bed and breakfast. Hey, Louise, here's your bed and breakfast spot. Not to make light of it, but we'll get you.
Where are we?
But just a point of clarification for me. I'm sorry, I may have missed it. The active frontage, how does that affect office space? So you just says you said there has to be retail restaurant space, lobbies, or building amenities on the ground floor.
Correct.
So how does that affect office space?
Totally precludes it. Unless it's part of a mixed use or otherwise, then it can be
That's what I'm
upstairs.
saying.
So we could do something.
That's
there-
what I'm just,
But we could place in the design that X amount of the floor, we could also consider X amount of that, the facade, the frontage, the percentage of the floor has to be in a retail use versus an office use. Or you're looking at just retail on the first floor and offices all above, kind of like where the Southern Plains Growler is. You know, you've got, what, 3 stories of offices, 2 stories of offices.
But you're saying the first floor has got to be it's got to be retail, restaurant, lobby.
Correct.
It cannot be just strictly office.
Unless we put a further allowance in there that would say, like I said, 50% of the ground floor has to be office, or max of 50% could be office. The other has to be retail or
Yeah.
Restaurant.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because thinking back, not to go backwards, but looking at C, that whole upper northwest corner of C that the village owns, let's just say the village decides to sell that, and there's just one big office building put on there. That really takes away from the active center if you have one big office building, because you own, how
Yes.
much, an acre and a half there, 2 acres? So somebody could put one big office building there, but you're saying the first floor of that would have to be retail.
Retail, restaurant.
Then I'm comfortable with that, if that's the case.
Is the prescription you're saying, Darren, about 50%, if you said that in one type, would that have to be carried over into other blocks, or could that be?
No, you could carry it over into other
yeah,
blocks.
anywhere you would
Wouldn't
be
have to
on,
be, though, I guess.
yeah, anywhere, it would apply anywhere.
Anywhere
it would
where
be the
active frontage. Anywhere where active
Okay.
frontage is.
Yeah.
And we haven't written that standard. I'm just saying that's something that we could do, and I've seen it. So, Block E. We were on 2, 3, and 4. Office, retail, live, work. Was that the uses that were kind of?
Thought we said no office, or did we?
Our consideration, I think.
Correct.
We were talking about E.
Straw poll, a southern accent there. All right, so let's do a straw poll real quick of who's here. You think we should? Okay.
Yeah, I think we-
We're going to have two straw polls real quick. So let's have a straw poll real quick. Should we include use 2? Office. Anybody yes? Thumbs up?
Yes, under the understanding that some of it has to be retail.
Okay.
Or it could be fronted on.
Well, that would be live work, not-
Non-activated
Oh,
front, right?
because of
On
the
the
active
first floor,
frontage.
it's active
I gotcha,
frontage,
I
yeah.
gotcha.
Anybody thumbs down on that at all?
Unless they put a one-story office, then there's no first floor. I mean, there's no second floor, so.
Well, see, you could still front it on the non-activated frontage there of Block E. So it could still occur one-story office and front, but just not on that activated, so
Well,
not
let's-
facing DRC.
Doesn't active require them to
I
face
thought it
it?
required.
But it's not active right there on that northeast side of Block E.
Yeah, but
Adjacent to Block
let's
F.
look into the requirements, because I thought where it said active, it had to face the active street. So that yellow, where McCaskill's coming through, it couldn't face that way. I think when that red is in place, and we'll have to look at that, I think the red is a requirement that it has to front on that side.
But if you had multiple, like if you had something on, if you had room to have it on both
If you
sides,
had-
which I don't know that
yes.
you did.
I don't think there's enough room.
If you had room, that's correct. But Alex, let's look at that, but I think that was my understanding. All right, so 2, 3, and 4?
So 2 is good. All right, so do we 3 and 4 are thumbs up? Anybody thumbs down on them? Okay. All right, so let's go with use number 5. Anybody, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'm thumbs down.
Thumbs down, thumbs down, I'll go thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so we're thumbs down on 5.
Right.
So that leaves us with 2, 3, and 4. Do we need to discuss just that last topic of where the frontage street should be? Leave it as it is, or?
Well, I think the active,
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
I mean, I think we're all kind of on board with that, where the active frontage is, because it's, like, it relates to the blocks below, and that relates to the blocks below. So it's trying to focus that activity inward.
It's step 43.
If somebody has a corner lot and both the streets are active, which way are you going to have them face?
Both.
Or do they face towards the water?
That's quite often specified in these type of form-based codes, yeah, on corner lots.
We
Well, see how that building right there faces, is that an entrance facing the corner?
Yeah,
It's just something to consider, it's not a question.
yeah, here's a corner lot where it
I'll
kind
bring
of
more
wraps
topics
around.
into this mix. It's just something to consider.
The one example you provided us months ago, too, that you ran into experience, we've been keeping that kind of the back of our minds when we're moving forward, too, so any experiences you've had with them like that, keep them.
All right, we're ready to move on to Block F? All right, so Block F contains, for the most part, contains the Clark property. See if I can get up there. So you can see it contains mostly this Clark property coming down to the corner of McCaskill on McIntyre. This is kind of their service yard over here. This is a separate use. I forget what's in this. Is it a caterer, something like in this particular building, which is on the Clark property? And then you have about, an acre here potentially of undeveloped land that's not currently owned by Clark. It's owned by somebody who lives in Southern Pines. And right now, what we're showing on that block, and we're not anticipating a lot of development, is 1 mixed use, 2 office, and 3 retail. We are not showing any active frontage on that block.
So let me ask you a question. In the unlikely event, I mean, the garage has been there for 100 years, but should Clark or whomever decide not to have an auto dealership there any longer and abandon the property or sell it or whatever, then what?
If they wanted if they wanted to keep the use could stay.
No, but let's say that another developer wanted to come in and change. It's currently, it's conforming. I mean, it's.
NC, it's NC. I think a lot of the stuff that's along McIntyre is probably non-conforming.
Yeah, regardless. But any new building / development would have to conform to this new overlay
Correct.
district, is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So if you
Unless it
come,
were just a rehab of the current structures, is
unless
that
there's
the
a
way that works?
rehab. Yeah. So let's look at that video right here. So you raise a good point. So if something would happen in here, they want to reconstruct or do something in here, the form-based code and architectural requirements would apply.
As to both use and then all the rest of the parameters?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And typically uses, once a use stops and a new use is proposed, conform to those new uses, whether or not you touch the building or not, other than what interior upfits or changes you need to make.
So should we show active frontage on this property?
And this is within the historic district, by the way, this parcel.
Yes, it is, right? Yeah.
I mean, I guess my worst-case scenario, everything gets raised and there's nothing there, someone's gonna redevelop it. You would probably want it facing in towards the more active area versus facing back out to Dundee.
Dundee, correct.
It was almost a tool to keep that from happening.
You mean active frontage?
Down McIntyre along McCaskill?
Well, you know, you raise a good point because the corner, right up here, this undeveloped corner, that can develop. So which way do you want that to be oriented? Do you want it to be oriented north to, what is that, Kelly Street?
Border, Kelly?
No, it doesn't. It looks like there's a parcel in there.
There's that undeveloped wooded area.
Yes.
That borders Kelly and McIntyre. So you'd probably want it to face McIntyre.
Yeah, I don't think we took that in.
You have those, yeah.
Yeah, you can't see it on this image, but yeah, Kelly runs on that sort of northeastern side of it.
We might not have,
No, I don't think so.
I don't think the boundary includes that.
no, you're right.
No, that's
Street
not
doesn't
within the
have it.
small area plan boundary.
No, the boundary doesn't,
Okay.
well, we might want to consider that, because that's all zoned NC right now. So we might want to consider adding that little portion in, because it is zoned for development, and if the development is going to occur, do we want that to aim towards Kelly? Or we want to aim that towards, and this is something we can do separately, towards McIntyre?
So we would have to add that into the plan.
Do we,
Into the overlay is something we can still do,
Yes,
right?
you
Just,
can-
we can add in just that parcel considering where it's located?
it's an, yeah, and it's an undeveloped NC parcel. So, you know, if we're having
range of
design
opportunities.
standards all around it, why wouldn't we want design standards to be on this particular?
Does the
That seems
moratorium apply only to those within the boundary?
Yep.
So you would have to amend the moratorium to include that parcel, is that correct?
That's, nothing's in play on that. We haven't heard any, we've heard nothing. So
I know, but I'm just saying, you know.
the next time we extend it, I mean, that's really what that is.
Show a different map.
Yeah, just potentially add that in. But now, hopefully, we're almost done with this process when the next time it comes up. All right.
We have 12 minutes left for today.
All right, so the consensus was we want to create an active frontage along along McIntyre? Is that it? Okay. So that would pull both sides of that street into active frontage. So that's a transition to Block G. Again, Block G has got that mix of uses in there. You've got some restaurants, a couple bars, a village printer, a couple other things going on. Right now, currently that block is a split between NC to the north and VMU to the south. Right now, what we are showing on that block is mixed use, office, retail, and live work at 1 to 2 stories.
I'd like to make a comment on the time also. Sorry to stop you. I think you kind of said, hey, we're going to work 4 to 6. Given this point in time, I think it's kind of either we're going to rush through it or we should probably take our time if you want to complete it tonight, right? So I think, given that, I think if some of us had something to do, you wouldn't still need, like if one of us needed to leave, not me. The rest of us could continue on to help you complete. Is that right?
correct, unless.
Okay, I
you-
just wanted to make sure
unless-
that that was out there for the board members to understand. You considering we're a work session, if someone had something to do, please just raise your hand. But I wanted to make sure we understood that in lieu of rushing it real quick in the last one. Okay? Yeah, which, I mean, I have one too.
Things like that.
Well, hopefully it picks up.
Not that Jeremy's asking anybody to leave.
What's that?
I said, not that Jeremy's asking anybody to leave.
Oh, hey, at some point in time, I gotta go feed my little one too, and here I am slowing down the process, right? We all do, so.
Well, I mean, we can set a hard stopping point
Well, we can, and that, I think that's really the conversation. I just know Durham wanted to push it through.
and not rush him.
Or we could either pick it back up, what's the request? Either pick it back up or work through it. I think that's our conversation.
Well,
I'd say,
what we would obviously yield to the board. What considerations do you guys have?
I mean, I'm hanging in. I mean,
6:15, 6:30? I mean, what's a cap for everybody? Just think about it.
I'll probably take off by 6:15. There's no probably, I will take off by 6:15.
Okay, okay.
Let's go to 6:15.
Let's go to 6:15. Hard
Yep,
stop.
I'm with
If we
Philip.
don't complete it, we'll just pick it up on the next meeting. Okay?
Always got to give Darren a 15-minute grace period,
That's fair.
minimum.
He wants us to be quiet so we can continue.
all right, Block G, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What everybody's thoughts? I mean, it really does fit in with a lot of the existing uses that are in there. Mixed use would be okay in there, and then offices are all right. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Offices wouldn't be a bad thing. We'd rather, if there's going to be offices located, you probably wouldn't mind them up here versus having more offices in that more active area. Retail, again, it could allow restaurants, could allow bars, a bar, pub, live, work, again. So it does allow a mixed bag of uses, of non-residential uses in there. It essentially allows the whole gamut of them.
And so everybody knows, looking at GIS, I think this block, it almost is split down the middle laterally, so there's sort of facing each way on each street, just so everybody knows what's there.
Yep, right here. Yeah, you can see it right here. You can see it kind of bisecting through here. So uses, fine. Active frontage, fine. We were trying to, I think the goal was trying to have that active frontage at the crossroads down there between McCaskill and Rattlesnake. And get away from that as you get up north on Rattlesnake.
And there again, that might have implications with the office use, depending on how we work on that.
So thoughts on this block?
So the active frontage
We're on,
currently.
we're on,
G.
G, is
G.
that correct?
G.
So as it extends possibly on the right side, down McIntyre, and then halfway down Rattlesnake Trail, there's really no issue with that, I wouldn't think, or is there an issue that anybody can see?
I don't-
Yeah. All right.
I think what we're really ending where that active frontage line really coincides with is that, the mixed-use building across the street that was planned. We've been seeing a lot more interest in this area. I mean, we're getting a lot of calls on some of the vacant buildings here, so there's a lot of interest changing ownership, things like that. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, consensus, anything were we missing? Good, good. Moving on, G to H, now, this might get easier. This is the Rehabilitation Center, I don't see that much moving out anytime in the near future. We're showing 2 and 3 in here, office and retail.
Well, the only thing is, the shortstop, I mean,
Oh, good point, good point. Shorts,
historically, those type of structures can change into different uses over time. Gas stations become
you're right,
X.
Pizza restaurant.
Pizza.
Yeah, I mean,
They
all
become
kinds of stuff.
Just about anything. So what would we allow it to morph into? Is that what we're?
that's a good point. What do we allow it to morph into? Do you want it to go away and make it a non-conforming use and just let it exist until it can't?
Because right now it's retail and actually it's also, I guess, what's that considered? What's the
Service?
greens that, what's the
Medical
manor
or-
care?
Oh, the manor care? I think
Residential care
it's
facility.
a residential
kinda.
care facility, yeah.
What would they be categorized now, manor care? I mean, I know it's manor care, but no, it's called greens at something or another now.
Yes,
Pinehurst.
Greens at Pinehurst, I believe.
Is it considered office, or is it considered mixed use, or what is it considered?
Residential care facility, isn't it?
I think what Jack's asking, what would be the most appropriate of these building
Oh.
types that it would
Right, right.
fit under?
It's a question.
Probably the closest thing is an office, the closest.
Yeah,
Talking about tailoring the uses for this area.
But we
to the
don't
greens
have to.
Currently, right?
We don't have to. We could make it, I'm not saying we should, we could make it non-conforming.
I just want to ask a little question for my information. On Lot E, we could see that the parcel line on whatever side that is ends there. Why don't we include that whole section in the map? See where it cuts across? It looks like it might be right-of-way or something. It's just a green space.
Southeastern corner of it, southeastern section?
It just cuts across there, and the lot line actually looks like it parallels that to the, whichever way I'm saying, north, I guess. But
You talking about the boundary line?
Yeah, the boundary line along
That's probably where-
Dundee at E. How it jogs in. It looks like it follows some weird expanded right-of-way there.
It could.
Dundee is like a 120-foot right-of-way? It's an expansive right-of-way along Dundee.
has no.
Or
it didn't
100
have-
feet, I'm sorry.
I would assume that that's probably right. Well, we can look into that. We can circle back to that.
I have a question about the building height on H. So 3-story, right across from community center, park, seems high. Unless we're building one of those indoor skydiving facilities, then I'm totally for it, but other than that, I think.
Is it only 2 stories right now?
Want to sit on that conditional zoning request? You would want to sit there?
All right, so 1 to 3, we're not good. We want to go 1 to 2. 1 to 2?
well, whatever's appropriate in that area, I just want to,
No, I get it. I mean, you're across from the park, right?
So is the greens currently, they're 2, right? So
They're one.
yeah, I think
they're-
one
so they're
to
just-
2
they're
is
one
more
altogether.
appropriate, right on 211 and so forth.
I agree, 1 to 2.
You got Rassy Wicker in the back. You've got,
You got a house right across the street.
Yeah, no, good catch.
well, that's going to, they'll go away.
Well, they could do that through a conditional zoning request, is that right, or would they have that opportunity?
They'll have that.
Catch. He's talking about building height, right?
Correct.
I think 1 to 2.
Building type. We've got office and we've got retail. Oh, yeah, the retail's in there, Jack, the retail's in there because we were picking up the
Fueling
quick stop.
station, yeah.
Good.
We think anything else? I mean, if we think mixed use would work in here?
You do have residential at 2 other corners of this intersection.
How, no, you're at the end of it there, okay.
Speaking for K and I hope I'm not jumping around, so blocks K, blocks I, is there a reason we would not consider retail in those areas, or we have not?
That was part of the discussion that was the direction that council had kind of pushed, not pushed, the way the council had, when we had our work session with them, I think their idea was if there was a place for office, medical professional, that type of stuff, that this could potentially be the appropriate location
So
for
that's our
that.
thought process, hopefully for
Closer
some
to
sort of
211
medical
and lots of
situation.
other
Okay.
Correct.
factors.
Plus, we didn't want to take away from the core area where we're trying to direct that activity down to. So we thought that if you looked at the original plans, we actually had residential shown on there. Through the discussions that we had, we decided to move to mixed use or office in that area.
So no retail to do the drawing that you're saying, drawing people down, but is retail at the corner where we have the quick stop is more because that's what we have there and it's close to the park and it's nice to have a place to get a snack?
You're right.
Well, I think there's different types of retail, and I think that if this conversation changes in the future from where it's been, I think that the idea of retail not being a corner space with what we would currently have could be a standalone restaurant, possibly. It could be, any sort of a standalone retail there, and that's an opportunity. So I don't have a strong feeling on that, but I think if that conversation changes again, I see the reasoning to possibly support, hopefully, the hospital growth. But I don't think that's a big problem with having any sort of standalone retail.
I think,
That's on I and K? Or
I think, the other point of consideration was if you look at the current village center and all the office uses in there, I think we've been trying to relocate those out of that area. We've actually have a code that requires it in certain circumstances, but, we'd always heard the discussion that there wasn't enough places to relocate to. So if you could create decent office development over here, that could also be a landing place. Plus you get a lot of those real estate offices and attorney offices close to 211. It'd be even probably more convenient for a lot of them
I
themselves.
certainly see the positive, and I just think same kind of argument. There's different type of offices, right? So there's not all offices are real estate offices or
Correct.
accounting offices. We also would have larger Turnberry Woods type offices.
Correct.
So, you can argue for both sides, man.
So 1 to 2, we had mixed use in 2.
So you're changing K to 1 and 2, is that what you just said?
No, I didn't even get to that block yet.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So 1,
Discussion too was, okay, are we done with what about the retail? I think that's what was the first thing that was raised. Retail in I or K? I think Darren told you
And you already have a little mini mart in the area that is off limits now, across Rattlesnake.
correct.
Am I right of the location on that? It's in that residential area. It's not in G.
No. What?
Right across from those those homes.
Like laundromat and all that, you mean?
Yeah, there's a laundromat over there.
Right across from K on this,
This?
No, that's
That's
all.
all residential.
no, there is a little,
No, not here. It's down here. Down in G.
That's what I was.
Yeah, you're talking to the laundromat and so forth?
That's on Kelly, isn't it?
That's on Kelly.
Yeah.
So let's go back to block, J and K. So we got 1 and 2 mixed use, and I don't know why it's just 2 here. Maybe I meant to have 1 and 2 here, mixed use and office. What are our thoughts on having mixed use here and mixed use here in these 2 places? So have 1 and 2 and I and 1
Same
and
as
2.
I.
Yeah, I think they'd be same as I. That's what I would probably support.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense there. It's because of the shortstop. Or no, no, never mind, L.
I mean, that was brought up. Do we include retail throughout I and K? Kind of hadn't.
I think that the preference when we had the direction that we had gotten from council through, after all the feedback, was that office, this could be a good location for medically related office. I think it was primarily related to that and potentially the offices locating out of.
Yes,
Village
remember
Center.
that, I remember that conversation. Yep.
All right, so we're good now on these 2 blocks? Mm-hmm. J. Now, J is currently zoned R10. There's about 2 or 3 single-family houses in there. I think there's 1 undeveloped parcel yet. What we're showing in that area is we're not showing it moving out of any residential, keeping it residential as townhouses, cottages, villas, or manors.
Yeah, it's sort of a residential enclave, however it gets built out in varying forms. Apparently, you're allowing for varying forms.
We are, correct. With the highest intensity form being the townhouse.
One comment, though, is the extension of Medlin all the way out to,
I meant to pull that off.
okay,
That's not meant. We pulled that off, and I don't know, it just didn't get reflected in here. we kept the pedestrian trail going through there in
Right.
in the Village Place
I'm
plan.
talking
but-
about Medlin now, right, not
Yep.
Kelly, okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I agree.
Nope.
Because that's village-owned property all the way through that
Nope,
corner,
you're
actually.
right. Even
We
the,
have to allow more civic uses. Right.
even the tip of that, of,
Right.
we did show a building in there for potential development for us, or should the village
Yeah,
decide they
well,
want to do something.
it was shown, yeah.
But you're right. That's a good catch.
So you'll adjust that later on.
Yep.
You have complete control, I assume, of this map.
You'll see,
right?
well, the final product's gonna look better than these little shading that you have on here, so.
Get control, believe me.
That speaks even more to the combination of K and J possibly being the same, right? With being more of a pedestrian trail instead of a street between the two.
Pardon me?
But so you're talking about Medlin not coming across
Yeah,
between
Medlin,
K and J.
there was no, yeah.
So that would speak more to the combination of the similar uses between K and I.
Yeah, really, I think what's gonna happen is,
Almost one continuous block
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Instead of 2 blocks, 1 block.
It could be one block.
yeah, but this block right now, we're showing for residential. And we're gonna- I mean, we think that
Well, it's parceled out that way a little bit now,
it is
too.
parceled out that way, so we thought, let's keep it that way.
So do those on J fit the amphitheater or whatever in the green space idea? I mean, it's close to it, so I guess my question is having residential right there fit whatever whatever use might be in that public open
That's cart and
space?
horse, because there's residential here right now, so that would have to be part of our decision-making process if we'd ever decide to put an amphitheater in that area.
No, I know you will.
What? Not my job. All right.
You already showed us the picture. It's too late.
The noise shuts off at 10 o'clock, so it's fine. All right, so going back down to Block L. Block L is currently zoned NC. That's the 1 acre piece that, about a 1 acre piece, I think, that we currently own, which is, and the building at the corner of Kelly and Kelly and Rattlesnake. Currently, we're showing various uses in there: mixed use, office, retail, or lived work on Block L. Right now, there is an office on it at the corner of Kelly and Kelly and Rattlesnake. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the uses that we could see locating along this frontage.
Is that the building we rented recreation space a while ago? Okay.
Yes.
I don't see that much difference between K and L. Why would we restrict things on K, but not on L? I know the shortstop is there, but that shouldn't even come into a discussion, because that could be anything in there.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah, right, you're right. Right, sorry.
I think it kind of goes back to some council direction there again.
Well, and I think the other thing on that one, Louise, is look at the opposing block face. If you look at the block face across Rattlesnake, that is right now and will be there's going to be a mixed bag of uses in there. So I think that was the rationale why we put all those. You see that they match up on each side of the block. That's why. And the one to the north, we didn't put all those uses in there because of the uses on the other side of that wonderful mask that I put on there.
Oh, you did that?
That's,
He actually
yeah,
took credit for it.
you know why I did that? Because it looks bad. So, yes. All right, so I think we're good there. We can finish out this block right now. Block M, building height 1 to 3, 1, mixed use.
Is it currently zoned to allow for a 3-story?
It is currently a zone for, it's currently at VMU. So it's currently, the VMU allows 50 feet. The current plan that's been approved is a 2-story.
Yeah, that's where I was going from.
Correct.
So that's my question, because, okay,
The vesting could go away.
well, that's true, but you're going to 1 to 3 here compared to the 1 to 2 it is currently.
Which is what I was trying to, when you looked at it, I was trying to line it up with the existing greens, which are 3 stories on that side. Then I was looking at kind of to the south. we didn't put it on, we had considered putting on across on McIntyre, but we thought, no, because of all the residential on that side,
Yeah,
let's keep it
okay.
at 1 to 2, so. I
So
think
this
we-
would actually be an expansion of the capability of that spot then if you allow 2 to 3 or 1 to 3, is that correct?
No, it would, no, because the capability of the spot right now is at 50. If the plan wasn't approved, then if the plan wasn't approved, you could come in with a development that could go up to 50 feet. If they came in with their vesting plan, they couldn't just go up, they couldn't just go up.
Be a substantial change.
That'd be a
They'd have to go
substantial
through the
change.
process.
They'd have to come back through the process.
Okay, I think I understand that. Thank you.
Because it'd be an increase.
There'd be an increase in intensity, so it would be required to go back through.
Okay.
Is that why you've got 3 stories on that one?
No, I got 3 stories on that one, just considering the VMU and the uses kind of in the area.
Might make the adjacent building not seem as tall if you have something else tall right there.
Could. We're showing 2 and 3 potentially across the street, although it's on a downslope. If there's a preference for anything else, just let me know what the thoughts are right now.
Well, I think Matt's saying essentially, I mean, L limits it to 2 stories. And then you jump to 3 stories before you get to the more intense district across the street. Do you want to do that, or do you want to keep it at 2, 1 to 2? You're trying to transition here in
You
every
are.
case, right?
I agree.
How tall is the greens?
Oh,
That's
53
okay.
feet. 4 stories, 53 feet. It's,
Well, one
Depends on where you
is
stand.
kind of below grade.
On the,
right?
on the
So-
west elevation is 4 stories, right? But when you get into the main parking lot, it's 3 stories, isn't it?
it's 3 on one side and it's 4 on the other, correct?
Correct. They have an approved plan for a 2-story building, 2-story mixed-use building.
I'd be in favor of restricting that to 1 to 2 at this point in time. I mean, things can always change in the future, but
Yeah.
it's a matter of transitioning height-wise as you go towards that central core area.
I think if the path is clear for that as well, I think that makes sense.
Consensus?
And what's approved in there is mixed use already, or it's
Uh-huh.
not? So
It
this
is.
would be.
It's approved
okay.
mixed use. Okay? Just so everybody knows, when we do a lot of these things that we're doing, they're all, when people say, they are all down zoning action. A lot of these are down zoning actions, so just so everybody's aware of that. Then we can end on building 9, or building block 9, which is the green site, that's pretty well all built out. It's 2 to 3, we got it 2 to 3 stories, and multiple family. I mean, we could put mixed use in there, should
That's a
something,
fait accompli. You might as well just hang in there with what we got.
should be good for now, yes.
Like it's not,
All right, we can save, save,
The best for last.
okay, do you want to hit that now?
Yeah.
We are.
All right, let's go.
I think O specifically is something we need to discuss, but, and that's the last couple as well, right?
O&P, we're on O&P, so this, what?
I said path of least resistance, it might just to start with P and save O for last.
Yeah. Anybody have any issues?
That's pretty
with P?
clear. That was the
Yeah, I think
motion.
the direction was to keep that residential.
Yeah, and
Yep.
detached.
Detached residential was exact, right?
And that showed in the plan as well, that showed in the plan renderings.
So anybody have any sort of feelings there?
Well, my feeling is that, number one, I don't see the building height on O. I'm sure it's just. got
Oh, we
obscured
missed it,
somehow or another.
we couldn't fit it on there, but 1 to 2, Jack.
It's 2 because we had to create 2 different blocks from that one.
Yeah, no, I
set.
understand, yeah. My only question is detached residential in P. Do you really think that's a practical matter to put detached in there compared to, multifamily and/or townhomes or something to that effect?
I think what we're trying to look at was the uses on the other side of Cadell, I think that's.
No, I know what you're trying to do, but
The approved plan said, wasn't it?
From what standpoint?
But yeah, what point?
Okay, you think non-residential? Mixed use. Okay.
Sure, right.
Well, thank you, no, thank you. No action is being taken tonight, we're just putting things down for,
That property right now? I
Uh,
mean, you know, it has,
Townhomes.
townhomes is what it's for.
So the
let's
reason,
can we get back to Jack's point, and let's see if we can knock off Block P first. So, 6, 7, and 8, so those are all single-family detached. Jack raises a good point. I mean, right now it's approved, it had been approved for a townhouse development site.
I mean, practically, I'm not sure that anyone doesn't necessarily build detached, single family. Yeah, besides that, it's really, there's not much left of the lot, quite honestly, when you're done slicing off a little bit of it here and a little bit of it there. Of course, that's up to the developer, if they think they can put them in there and the trouble is with single-family detached is that someone will come in and just put them in there, period, whether they make sense to the rest of the area or not. Whereas a townhome, or multifamily of some sorts might make more sense relative to what's across the street and where we're trying to go with that.
And
Maybe
I
I'm
think
wrong.
we put that on there because I thought that was what council approved with the small area plan, was that as detached.
I
Because they
thought it was,
did a-
you may be right. I'd have to really look at that again.
Just on the Cadell and McCaskill Road, because the council did adopt a different recommendation, slightly different recommendation than what this board sent to them, very slightly, with that change, I think.
Yeah, mostly in P, correct?
Yeah, I think we said transitioning to single-family.
Detached.
Well, if council said that we're going to go that way, we'll go that way. I mean,
But we hadn't, you know what, we hadn't gone into the discussions on the regulating plan. So it
Right.
doesn't mean we can't reflect that, have another discussion.
Yeah, I don't
on
want to
that.
back up to another argument that's already been held, so we can hold it till later.
well, is
Okay.
topography our biggest concern there, Jack? Is that really where you're kind of coming from, for the most part?
Topography partially, it's also a transition, and we got to, I think, it just seems like a reasonable spot to have multifamily townhomes and so forth.
Except, I mean,
And that you want to promote some of that in the village.
on the
to
other
some
side of
extent.
Cadell, that's what you have, so
Well, on the other side of Cadell, yeah.
aren't we talking about Cadell or?
No,
where
no,
are you
we're
talking
not talking about those 3 lots. We're talking about P, Lot P.
How about P?
Which is, look on the upper left-hand of the
Here,
picture
here.
here.
about? Yeah, P on Cadell?
Adding it for-
Oh, it goes to Cadell, you're
Single-family
correct. It
houses
goes to Cadell, you're correct. I'm not sure you could build off of Cadell.
Well,
It's a huge
Oh,
drop-off.
it is a very, you're right,
it'll get
huge
mitigated.
drop.
You have to-
You'll end up with some walkout back
That's what I was
basements
saying.
there.
Because we had different uses for P and O, that's why.
Okay, no, I see where people are going as far as argument, since it does actually border on Cadell.
That was,
And so I'll back off on that. We don't need to discuss that at the,
that was the reason, Jack.
yeah,
I
think
don't
it was-
disagree, but that was the reasoning, and that was the support we got, and so that's why we went that direction. So 6, 7, and 8, I mean, that doesn't mean that at some point in the future, we can change if a development comes along that we all love.
It would be easier just to combine those two into one block, just 5 through 8. Because how deep is Block O now?
It would make things a
Well,
lot.
the issue was that, and I remember, well, talking
could
about
write
any
that.
kind of commercial development facing Magnolia across from the Arboretum, if you recall that
The correct,
conversation, and wanted to restrict that upper part
I
to,
do.
and only commercial and retail facing Magnolia.
Magnolia, correct, I remember that.
That's why that's caught a split, actually.
That is why, and the 2 reasons why it's split, we were going to allow more uses along Magnolia, the attached, and the P is really that transit, we just grabbed this line, we can,
Yeah, P is a transition, and it should be residential of some nature, and
Yeah.
that covers the boat, 6, 7, and 8.
because, oh, now I remember, when we originally had this proposal, we had O and P separated, and we had more commercial in O than we did. So that's why it looks the way it does.
Yeah, no, I think it sort of makes sense the way it is.
Kind of future.
I mean, we could add 5, we could combine it, and it could be 5, and we could write something that,
Yeah, that was my other question. I think I wrote that down. I was surprised not to see number 5 and P as a residential.
well, I think it was because of the discussion that about having that transition to single-family as you go up to Cadell. Detached specifically. But that doesn't, but the way it could be written as well is that only the front, any development fronting along Cadell would be single-family attached. You could transition back to townhouses potentially along McCaskill, right?
Yeah, I think you should revisit that with the council possibly later on. I mean, they were very specific about, that's why it's detached residential right in there only right now. And I understand where that's coming from, but it may be worth revisiting that maybe townhouses is appropriate.
And I'm pretty sure, like, that was the bulk of the conversations with council at adoption for that.
It was, but we hadn't had this specific discussion, really, so if I'm going around the table, Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
On the Cadell side, I like the detached because I think it fits the other side of Cadell. On the rest of the property, I mean, depending on how it's divided up, looking at what's there right now,
Okay,
I don't have a preference on the other side.
Luis? Luis?
I'm sorry, I was mesmerized. I think there's got to be, there's got to be a transition residential. I don't think you get, I think the neighbors would go crazy. So
Well,
that'd be a hard road.
okay.
You know, I think from our discussions and our process previously, I think it was a consensus from our board to make that some sort of, more mixed use from where we were. That's not where we are, and that's not the direction necessarily from council. And so I don't know if we're going to be able to get our way on that standpoint. But I see a little bit of danger in P and O being a little bit different, whether that including townhomes on both sides or not. And I think one of those dangers in reality, or is if you included the whole parcel, then that's probably what you're going to get. You're going to get a townhome community.
Which you currently can't have under the zoning right now.
It could not happen.
Could.
It could. It could possibly happen. And I think if you just leave O by itself inclusive of number 5 and not P, then I think one of the effects would be, would we have front-facing garages down that whole street? Because I think you're going to end up with a townhome development across that street, everybody pulling in right on the front. And I think that's something of consideration.
I think we have,
As a larger entire parcel here, you'll actually allow for a better overall design for the entire parcel by keeping it uniform. You'll have better opportunities to address the parking and
that's kind
have
of
the room.
Okay.
Front-facing garage is another discussion, because
It's
I
another
don't think they
discussion.
belong anywhere near.
we're taking care of that.
But I think that's something of consideration if we do O and P, and so I would be in favor of at least combining them together to make it one block, and then having the townhome discussion.
It's worth broaching that conversation.
What if you just move the O line? Move the O line closer to Cadell and shorten the P section so that you have a larger section that could be developed as townhomes, and the lot depth along Cadell mirrors what the lot depth currently is along Cadell, which is, I don't know.
I like getting rid of that line as well.
5 through 8, we'll see if we can.
I do, just because of the existing configuration that's in there right now. The existing utilities are set up for townhouses along there. And it makes it easier for our life.
Yeah, really, and I think it would allow for a better overall design for development of that property. You can negate any of those. I think a good designer could come in and negate any of those potential impacts, negative impacts with the adjacent properties and front-facing, rear-loading.
Townhouses are not, townhouses, you can design nice townhouses. It's not like you can design a nice-looking townhouse. You really can't. All right.
So where did you come out on that? You're recommending combining those two and making them 5 through 8? Is that what you're saying?
We're gonna, yeah.
Going to explore that as a viable alternative?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. when it comes,
There's going to be a lot of open questions as we go along.
there is. But
And
when
we'll
it
have to
comes,
circle
when it
back.
comes out of this discussion, the discussion that we're having, this is very helpful to us, because it's not just staff driving a lot of this stuff. It's coming through discussions with y'all. So,
Got through.
got through it.
Kind of.
Right, actually, pretty useful.
Thank you. Next, well, we'll revisit some of this stuff probably. But next time, I don't know what we're covering next time.
Need a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I think we do. If that's it from Darren and staff, I'd just point out that our next meeting
Darren's done.
is 4th of August at 4 o'clock here in this room. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.